The stillness of the morning was broken by an unsettling silence. For weeks, Jake had noticed something was wrong with his pond. The usual rippling surface, once teeming with the silver glint of fish darting beneath, now looked eerily empty. The quiet gnawed at him. He had spent years cultivating this pond, stocking it, maintaining the ecosystem, ensuring it thrived. It was his sanctuary, his pride, and yet something was draining the life from it. At first he dismissed it as paranoia. Maybe the fish were simply staying deep due to the changing seasons. But then the evidence began piling up. Small disturbances along the banks, faint footprints in the damp earth, too large to be from any animal he knew. Discarded fishing lines that certainly weren't his. And worst of all, the unmistakable feeling that he was being watched. One night, restless and determined, he sat by the window, eyes locked on the pond under the glow of the moon. The woods behind it stood dark and silent, but just as he was about to give up and go to bed, a figure emerged. At first, just a shadow against the trees, but then a distinct shape, a person. The stranger moved with a deliberate casualness, stepping onto his land as if they owned it. Jake's pulse quickened. He watched as the figure strolled right to the water's edge, took out a fishing rod, and with a practiced flick of the wrist, cast a line into his pond. Anger surged through him. Someone was trespassing on his land, stealing from him, and they didn't even have the decency to be discreet about it. Grabbing a flashlight, he stormed outside, feet crunching against the grass. The moment he clicked the beam on, the figure barely flinched as if they had been expecting him. The light illuminated a familiar, smug face. Karen. Jake could hardly believe it. Of all people, it had to be her. The self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood, the woman who ran the HOA with an iron fist, the same woman who had fined him for leaving his garbage bin out an hour too long. And now here she was blatantly trespassing. She turned to him with a slow, infuriating smile, as if she were greeting an old friend. "Oh, Jake. You scared me," she said, though her tone lacked even a trace of genuine surprise. "What the hell are you doing?" His voice came out sharp, barely containing his rage. Karen reeled in her line lazily, not bothering to hide her catch, a large, glistening bass. "Just enjoying the pond," she said airily. "It's such a lovely spot, don't you think?" Jake took a step forward. "That's my pond. On my land." Karen arched a brow. "Oh, come on. It's right next to the community trail. If anything, you should be grateful people appreciate it." "People?" he echoed, the word laced with barely restrained fury. "How long have you been doing this?" She shrugged, clearly unfazed. "A few months, maybe? Time flies." His hands curled into fists. He had spent those months wondering why his fish were disappearing, setting up motion cameras, doubting himself. And all the while, she had been helping herself without a second thought. "You're trespassing," he said coldly. "Pack up your stuff and leave. And don't come back." Karen let out a short, amused laugh, as if he had just told a particularly ridiculous joke. "Jake, let's not be dramatic. It's just fishing." "It's my property," he shot back. "And you're stealing from it." She sighed, rolling her eyes as if this conversation was a tedious inconvenience. "You do realize you're being unreasonable, right? This pond should be for everyone. It's practically part of the neighborhood." He felt his jaw tighten. "It's not." Karen exhaled, shaking her head in mock disappointment. "You're always so stubborn." "Fine. Have it your way." She reeled in her line, took her time gathering her things, and then, just before turning to leave, smirked at him. "But you really should consider sharing, Jake. People might start thinking you're selfish." With that, she strolled off, completely unfazed, as if she hadn't just been caught red-handed. Jake stood there, watching her retreating figure, blood pounding in his ears. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even remotely ashamed. And worst of all, he knew, she had no intention of stopping. Something inside him hardened. If Karen thought she could keep stealing from him without consequences, she was dead wrong. Jake knew Karen wouldn't stop. The way she had smirked at him that night, the smugness in her voice, it all made one thing clear. She wasn't just stealing from his pond, she was reveling in the fact that she could do it without consequence. At first, he tried the reasonable route. He gathered his evidence, the footprints, the fishing lines left behind, the timestamp videos from his motion-activated camera, and took it straight to the HOA. He expected them to be outraged or at the very least, impartial. What he hadn't accounted for was just how much sway Karen had over them. "She's the HOA president," one of the board members said with an apologetic shrug, barely glancing at the footage. "She's done a lot for this community." Jake's temper flared. "That doesn't give her the right to trespass on my land." Another board member sighed. Look, if it were someone else maybe we could take action, but do you really want to stir up trouble? She's been running the HOA for years. People respect her. Respect. That was a joke. Karen didn't earn respect. She demanded it, enforced it with fines, rules, and carefully orchestrated social pressure. And now, when she was clearly in the wrong, they were too afraid to stand against her. Jake leaned forward, jaw tight. So, if I were the one stealing from her property, you'd be fine with that? Silence. A few uncomfortable glances. Then the first board member cleared his throat. We'll take your concerns under advisement. That was the moment Jake knew he was on his own. The next time he caught Karen at his pond, she wasn't alone. Two other women stood beside her, chatting as they cast their lines, their folding chairs and coolers set up like they were on some kind of weekend retreat. Jake stormed down the hill toward them. Are you kidding me? Karen barely turned, her expression one of bored amusement. Oh hey Jake. Lovely day, isn't it? What part of "stay off my property" didn't you understand? One of the women chuckled. Relax, hon, it's just a bit of fishing. His patience snapped. This is my land, you are trespassing. Pack up and go. Now. Karen sighed, reeling in her line. You really don't know how to let things go, do you? She gestured vaguely to the pond. I mean, look at it. Do you even realize how selfish you sound? You have all this and you don't want to share. Jake felt his fists tighten at his sides. It's not about sharing. It's about respect. Karen tilted her head as if considering his words. Then she smiled, slow and condescending. All right, if it means that much to you, she turned to the other women. Ladies, I suppose we should be heading out. Jake here doesn't believe in community spirit. They packed up with deliberate slowness, murmuring amongst themselves, shaking their heads as if he were the unreasonable one. As they walked past him, one of them muttered, such a shame wasting a good pond like that. Karen, the last to leave, paused just long enough to throw him one last smirk. You know, she said lightly, you could take this up with the HOA. Oh wait. She gave a mock pout. They don't seem too concerned, do they? Jake had never wanted to throw someone into a pond more in his life. She was taunting him, daring him to react, to lash out in a way that would make him look like the problem. He wouldn't give her that satisfaction. But he also wasn't going to let this go. The next morning he called the police. The officer who arrived was polite but non-committal. Do you have signs posted? Jake frowned. What? The officer gestured toward the pond. No trespassing signs. If there's nothing posted, it's a bit of a gray area, especially if the HOA argues it's community property. Jake exhaled sharply. It's not community property. It's mine. I understand, sir. But without clear signage, she can claim she didn't realize it was private land. She knows it is. The officer sighed. Look, I can have a word with her, but unless she damages something or refuses to leave when asked, there's not much we can do. Jake clenched his jaw. Of course Karen knew exactly how to toe the line, staying just within the bounds of plausible deniability. That evening he hammered 5 large no trespassing signs around the pond, each one glaringly obvious. He even added a security camera with a visible warning sticker. It didn't matter. 2 days later Karen was back. Not only fishing but recording herself doing it. Jake watched from his porch as she posed with her latest catch, grinning into her phone camera. A live stream. That was the final straw. He marched down to her, barely containing his fury. Are you actually broadcasting yourself trespassing on my land? Karen clicked off her phone screen, looking entirely unconcerned. Oh, relax, Jake. It's just a little community engagement. People love seeing this place. He let out a bitter laugh. Oh, I bet they do. Are you charging them for access too? Karen gave him an innocent look. Now that's an idea. Jake stepped closer. This isn't a game. This is my property. I will take legal action. Karen's expression flickered, just for a second, before she recovered. Oh, Jake. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, handing it to him. By the way, you've got a complaint filed against you with the HOA. Something about harassment. Jake unfolded the paper, his hands tightening around it. Harassment? He repeated, incredulous. Karen shrugged. You keep bothering me while I'm just minding my own business. Really, Jake, it's not a good look. His vision burned with anger. She was twisting everything, manipulating the system to make him the problem. And worse, she was winning. But not for long. As Karen gathered her things, she patted him lightly on the shoulder. Maybe next time, try being a little more neighborly. Jake stood there, rage simmering beneath his skin, watching her leave. She thought she was untouchable. That she could keep taking from him, twisting the narrative, making him look like the villain. But she had just made one very big mistake. She had underestimated him. Jake spent the next few days consumed by a singular purpose: bringing Karen down. The anger simmering inside him had hardened into something sharper, colder. She had taunted him, manipulated the HOA, and turned the rules against him. But rules worked both ways. If Karen wanted to play dirty, he would play smarter. First, he went to the county records office. It didn't take long to obtain official documentation proving beyond any doubt that the pond sat entirely on his land. There was no ambiguity, no gray area. It was legally his, and anyone fishing there without his permission was trespassing. Next, he dug through the local fishing regulations. What he found made his pulse quicken with satisfaction. The county had strict laws about fishing on private property without written consent from the owner. Violators could be fined, or even arrested. With his legal ammunition in place, Jake installed additional cameras, ones Karen wouldn't notice. Hidden, high-resolution lenses that captured everything. He set them to record motion, ensuring that every second of her illegal activity was documented in crisp detail. Then he waited. It didn't take long. On a breezy Saturday morning, Jake checked the live feed on his phone. There she was, Karen, standing by the water, casting her line as if she had every right to be there. This time she wasn't alone. 3 men stood beside her, chatting casually as they fished. She had escalated from entitled neighbor to full-blown ringleader of a trespassing operation. Jake's heart pounded. He had her. Instead of confronting her, he called the police. This time he was ready. "Hello, I'd like to report an active trespassing and illegal fishing incident on my private property," he said, keeping his voice calm and precise. "I have clear posted signs, security footage, and legal proof of ownership." The dispatcher took down his information. "An officer will be dispatched shortly." Jake stood on his porch, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold from a distance. Karen and her group laughed, clinking their beer cans together, oblivious to what was coming. Then the sound of tires crunching on gravel. A patrol car pulled up near Jake's driveway. 2 officers stepped out. He met them halfway, handing over the documents he had carefully prepared. "I want to press charges," he said firmly. The lead officer, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes, nodded as she scanned the papers. "You've got everything in order. Let's go have a chat." They moved toward the pond. Jake stayed a few steps behind, relishing what was about to happen. "Excuse me, folks," the officer called out, her voice carrying over the water. Karen turned, annoyance flashing across her face, until she saw the uniforms. Her expression shifted, but not fast enough to hide the brief flicker of panic. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, plastering on her usual smug smile. "Yes, ma'am. We received a report of illegal fishing and trespassing on private property." The officer gestured to the no trespassing signs clearly posted around the pond. "This land belongs to Mr. Carter, and you do not have permission to be here." Karen scoffed. "Oh, come on. It's just a bit of fishing. No harm, no foul." One of the men chuckled. "Seriously, officer? We're not criminals." The officer's face remained impassive. "Actually, under county law, fishing on private property without written consent is a misdemeanor offense, punishable by fines, and, in repeated cases, arrest." That got their attention. The men shifted uncomfortably. One of them quickly reeled in his line, already backing away. Karen, however, stood her ground. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "Jake's just being petty. I run this neighborhood. I have every right to use the pond." The officer arched a brow. "That's not how property law works, ma'am." She glanced at Jake. "Do you wish to press charges?" Jake didn't hesitate. "Yes." Karen let out an incredulous laugh. "You can't be serious." "I am," Jake said coolly. The officer turned back to Karen. "Then I'm going to need you to put down your fishing equipment and come with me." Karen's face drained of color. "What?" "You've been recorded trespassing multiple times. You were warned. Now you're facing legal consequences." The men took another step back. One of them muttered, "We didn't know it was private, officer. We're leaving." The officer nodded. "Go ahead. But she is coming with us." Karen whirled to them. "You cowards, don't just leave me here." One of them shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "You didn't say it was illegal, Karen." Then they turned and bolted, practically tripping over themselves in their rush to escape the situation. Karen spun back, rage twisting her features. "This is harassment. You can't do this." but she was already being guided toward the patrol car. Jake stood nearby, arms crossed, watching with quiet satisfaction. Just before she was placed inside, she snapped, "I'm going to sue you, Jake. You have no idea who you're messing with." Jake simply smiled. "I think I do." The officer shut the car door. As the patrol car pulled away, a strange sense of peace settled over Jake. For the first time in months, the pond was his again. No trespassers. No entitled HOA tyrant ruining his land. Just the quiet ripple of water and the knowledge that, for once, justice had been served. But he knew Karen wouldn't let this go easily. And that was perfectly fine. Because neither would he. Karen's arrest sent shockwaves through the neighborhood. Word spread fast, faster than even Jake had anticipated. By the time he returned from the police station, phone calls and hushed conversations had already ignited across the cul-de-sac. People peeked from behind their curtains, whispered on their front porches, and sent frantic messages in the community group chat. The mighty HOA president hauled off in handcuffs. Jake wasn't naive. He knew Karen wouldn't stay in jail for long. Petty trespassing and illegal fishing weren't exactly capital offenses. But that wasn't the point. The point was humiliation. She had built her power on the illusion of control, on fear and intimidation. That illusion had just been shattered in the most public way possible. Still, he knew she wouldn't retreat quietly. She had spent too long reigning over the HOA, dictating rules and enforcing fines with an iron grip. A single arrest wouldn't be enough to stop her, not permanently. And he was right. Karen returned the next evening. Not in her usual condescending stride, not with her smug smirk or dismissive remarks. This time, she came with barely contained fury crackling beneath her carefully composed mask. Jake was waiting for her on his porch, sipping a beer like he hadn't a care in the world. When she marched up his driveway, he leaned back casually and gave her a slow, knowing smile. "Enjoy your stay downtown?" he asked. Karen's nostrils flared. "You think this is funny?" "A little," Jake admitted. She crossed her arms, her nails digging into her skin. "You had no right." Jake arched an eyebrow. "No right? You trespassed on my land. You ignored my warnings. You broke the law." He took another sip of his beer. "What did you think was going to happen, Karen? That you could keep pushing and never face any consequences?" Karen's expression darkened. "I am the HOA, Jake. I don't care what you think you pulled, this neighborhood still answers to me, and you." She jabbed a finger at his chest. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Jake chuckled, utterly unbothered. "You've been saying that for months. And yet here I am." Karen's jaw tightened. "You think this is over? I'm going to make your life a living hell. You don't understand the kind of power I have." Jake sighed dramatically. Karen," he shook his head as if scolding a misbehaving child. "Still making threats, huh? I figured after spending a night in lockup, you'd have learned a thing or two about consequences." Her hands curled into fists. "You don't know who you're messing with." Jake leaned forward, his voice dropping to a calm, dangerous edge. "Oh, I think I do. And that's exactly why you should be worried." Karen narrowed her eyes. "What does that mean?" Jake smirked. "You see, Karen, I've been busy. While you were off trying to intimidate me, I was doing some digging of my own. And guess what I found?" For the first time, hesitation flickered across her face. Jake pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. "Turns out there are quite a few financial irregularities in the HOA's accounts. Weird, right? Fines that don't add up, missing funds, unexplained expenditures. And the best part? All of it traces back to you." Karen's face went still. Jake continued, his voice as smooth as silk. "You've been pocketing money for years, haven't you? Fining people for ridiculous infractions, siphoning off HOA funds, misplacing budgets. And no one questioned it, because who would dare stand up to the mighty Karen?" He let the words hang in the air, savoring the way her confident facade began to crack. "That's a lie," she hissed. Jake tilted his head. "Oh? Then I'm sure you won't mind if I hand all this over to the real authorities. You know, the ones who deal with fraud and embezzlement." Karen's breath hitched. Jake grinned. "See, trespassing and fishing without a permit? That's small potatoes. A slap on the wrist. But embezzlement? That's serious. That's the kind of crime that doesn't just go away." Panic flared in her eyes, but she fought to keep her expression neutral. "You have nothing." Jake let out a low chuckle. "Oh, I have everything. Bank statements. Expense reports. Testimonies from neighbors who suddenly owed fines they never got a proper explanation for. And my favorite, misallocated community funds withdrawn under your authorization." He leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper. I wonder how the HOA will feel when they realize their president has been robbing them blind. Karen's bravado crumbled. You wouldn't, she whispered, her voice raw with desperation. Jake smiled. Oh, but I will. She looked around as if hoping to find an escape, but there was none. He had backed her into a corner, just like she had tried to do to him. Jake stood, stretching leisurely. So, here's how this is going to go. You're going to resign from the HOA. Effective immediately. No farewell speech, no dramatic exit. Just a quiet, pathetic disappearance. And in return? He tapped his phone. Maybe this evidence doesn't find its way to the county prosecutor. Karen's lip trembled. You have 24 hours, Jake added, his voice turning ice cold. After that, the choice is out of my hands. For a long moment, Karen just stood there, looking small and defeated in a way he had never seen before. Then, with one last venomous glare, she turned on her heel and stormed away. Jake watched her go, feeling the weight of months of frustration finally lifting from his shoulders. The next morning, the HOA group chat lit up with an unexpected message. Effective immediately, I am stepping down as president of the HOA. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. Karen. Jake smirked. Checkmate.